I'm Dr. Fred Ogola. I'm a professor of strategy and decision making at Strathmore Business School. This week, it was all about inauguration, where we had more than 30 heads of state and governments attending President Ruto's inauguration at Kasarani Stadium. We could see some things there to mention, like today we remember one of the quote done by Okia Mutata, that when President Uhuru Kenyatta gave President Ruto the constitution and the sword, he raised up the sword, but he put down the constitution. So his question was, is he going to uphold the rule of the sword or the rule of the constitution? That is your gaze, my brothers and sisters, in this show. And your gaze is actually as good as mine. It depends on Ruto's character, which we are going to discuss today in today's session. At the same time, we saw that there are some gender rules where President Ruto says that he's going to have 50% of the cabinet being women. He'll ensure that all institutions complies to one-third gender rule. I'm told that if that is being done in many places, it will maybe cost us around 7 million Kenya shillings every year. And of course, another thing we see in the news is that the CEO of NHIF is in a fight with the board of NHIF over schools medical insurance. Remember, when the board and the CEO fights, who loses? You can guess. Normally it's the CEO. But of course, that also brings credibility to NHIF. Remember, NHIF has been one of the poorest performance government bodies that we have in this administration. We have also seen something very clear that budget has been done and is being drafted, and the policies are being drafted under Uhuru Kenyatta's rule, while the implementation will happen under President Ruto. Look at the fact that Uhuru had a budget of 3.3 trillion, and now to implement the extractive, let's say, economic policy of Ruto, the hustler economics, the bottoms up, the subsidies, it will cost us another extra 1.7 trillion on top of 3.3 trillion, which also had a budget deficit of 826 trillion, which means that Ruto may be looking for something around 2.2 trillion outside the current budget if he adds plus the subsidies. Where will that money come from? We shall tell you that on how Ruto will engage the IMF in this week's segment. We also find that Ruto has seen the challenges of implementing this extravagant economy is bad, so he has shifted from his policy against subsidies. I agree with him absolutely, because you can't live on subsidies. Subsidies are meant to stop you from sinking. They are never good economic policies when economy should be afloat. So we want the economy to be afloat. We don't want to live on subsidies, because subsidies simply means living on handouts. And the other thing we see is that consumers has been hit by electricity prices have gone up, and this has gone up simply because of the fuel prices have gone up. And lastly, as all administration face it, President Ruto is facing what's called a bumpy economic ride in his first 100 days, literally. You leave from Kasarani, you reach State House, and you find this fuel crisis, which has created crisis in electricity, among other ways of working. Inflation was at 8.5%. You can guess it may actually reach 10% if anything is not done about the current fuel crisis. So this week's segment, we shall focus on what? Hope amid hopelessness. What do we mean by that? We can still give an aura of hope because of the fact that, in spite of the fact that President Ruto has gone to State House and met this harsh economic crisis, we still have hope because of what? One, Kibaki took over in 2002 with a GDP of around 2.2 trillion, and the economy was completely in shambles, but he also took over when he was actually sick on a wheelchair. Look, he turned around the economy and left the economy to President Uhuru when it was around 6.6 trillion GDP. Now, Uhuru has given Ruto a GDP of 11.07 trillion, and that is now what he has to grow. So what is happening is that, can Ruto grow this economy? And I can tell you what, to grow this economy, the change is going to be harder, because to grow economy of 2.2% by a double-digit figure is easier than to grow an economy which is bigger like this one, which is now 11.07 trillion by double digit. So Kenyans should not expect a very big, or if you like, a double digit growth, because it is possible to grow it when it is 2.2 trillion. But it's harder to grow it when it is 11.07 trillion. So Kenyans should be patient with that. But Ruto also should be consoled, when I call it hope, I mean hope, by what happened to President Obama. When President Obama took office, there was a global financial crisis, and there was so much expectation about him. I also remember, being an African origin, people said, can an African turn around an economy under those circumstances? Guess what? He did it. So me, I don't want to tell you why, how, when, and how. The point is that let's have hope amid this hope. Now, for this to happen, President Ruto needs to have a certain character. And I want to distinguish them into two. There's what you call a pessimistic outlook or a positive outlook. And pessimism is smarter than optimism. Why am I saying that? If you enter in a mosquito net and there's a mosquito inside, as an optimist, you'll say, let me just sleep, the mosquito will die and all will go well. A pessimist will say, no way, I must wake up, switch on the lights, and smash the mosquito so that I can go back to sleep. If Ruto sits in State House, hoping, just hoping, that the economy will turn without working, it won't work, because hope has never been a strategy. So I hope that President Ruto becomes a pessimist. But the fact that he rose from the so-called a farmer, a chicken farmer, to the presidency, I'm sure he has known how it is not, things don't happen, but things are made to happen. Let me bet on that character and give him the following. Now, he is being a decisive president. There's advantages and disadvantages of being decisive. One thing, if you are decisive and you decide the wrong thing, you can only do the wrong thing rightly. And if you are decisive and you decide to do the right thing, you can do the right thing rightly. I give this example, for example, a rhino. A rhino is an animal that doesn't get interested too quickly. You can throw a stone at it, you can abuse it, it can just continue eating grass. But when the rhino turns to charge you, you know what a rhino charge is all about. So this could be a character of not a very decisive person, but when they decide, you see magnitude. But President Ruto needs to decide very quickly, so he needs to be very cautious. And this will be very much important if the people sitting next to him be able to give him the right information to make him decide quickly. So he has been very good in consuming information, generating information, and using information. The second thing you want to look about here is that he needs to have a different approach to IMF compared to all his predecessors, that is President Moi, Mwai Kibaki, Ruto, Uhuru, and other presidents who are there before. Why am I saying that? IMF has always been giving us what we call a conditional facility to deal with the issues that our heads are underwater and we need to come out of our trouble. But Ruto needs to follow IMF by getting what is called a precautionary facility to help us not even to get into trouble for the worst case. So for this to happen, Kenyans must have a certain mentality. And that mentality, I'll call it what? Kenyans need to embrace what is called forecast poverty so that they can be wealthy. What do I mean by that? And I'll give you a very interesting story from my own personal life. When I was growing up, my father was a catechist. We had some cows. We had some farms. My father could sell cows, which made him very poor, more and more poor. He could ensure that he does not enjoy so much life, but invest in my education. And having educated me, then I managed to grow my career until I became a professor, and therefore that is the wealth he left in this world. So Kenyans may have to embrace poverty in a few years so that future generations can enjoy. Kenyans will like to have quick wins. They want ugali to be on the table today. They want subsidies on fertilizer. They want subsidies on everything. Can this happen at the same time very early? No. There must be a generation that must actually sacrifice, because I can tell you, during Ruto's time, the economy will be very tough, and we need to embrace and work very hard and also persevere and be patient so that the generations of tomorrow can survive. But if we eat our future in subsidies by borrowing money from abroad and we eat it, we should have eaten the future of ourselves, the future of our children, and the future of grandchildren, and when they come back, they'll be in a deep hole and they said, when you are in a hole, stop digging. Let us wait and see whether Ruto will stop digging or he'll be tempted to start digging, because crisis will be serious and Kenyans will continue putting pressure on him, and the only way to do is to dig. Thank you.